The body is classical information. The mind is quantum information. And the spirit is meaning, the meaning of quantum information. Every one of us has to find out who he is by an experience of who he is, not by reading a book and repeating what it. That's what AI does.
Yeah.
Once you decide that you're going to find out, the world will present you the next step to do.
I had the honor of once again meeting physicist and inventor of the first microprocessor, Federico Faggin, whose life mission it has become to understand consciousness and the meaning of life.
And all of a sudden, out of the chest, just energy was coming out of my chest, but it was love. And it was love that was never felt before. It was love that was coming from me.
After our previous video with Federico, your heartfelt comments just kept pouring in. Thank you so much for this. Because together you told the YouTube algorithms that the world needs to hear Federico's message of oneness.
Everything is interconnected. Life starts with one. It doesn't start with a cell.
I'm just an average tall Dutch guy fascinated by consciousness. But next to me is the real giant we would be interviewing again. In this video we will recap the basics of Federico's quantum theory of consciousness, explain them in more detail, and he will share new ideas with us from his upcoming book.
Quantum physics is actually pointing to the mind of the universe. In fact, a good way to think of this is the color wheel. You know the color wheel?
Yeah.
Okay, red, green, and blue, right? So if red is the body, green is the mind, and blue is the spirit, they have overlap regions. Each field is observer, observe, and agent. So there has to be an overlap between spirit and body. Ooh, what is there?
Yeah, tell me.
The permanent memory of the experience of the self-knowing of one, space, time, and matter.
Welcome at the Essentia Foundation's YouTube channel. We are sitting here in Barcelona, where the Science of Consciousness conference is held. And we have the honor of sitting down again with Silicon hero Federico Faggin. Federico, a very warm welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure is mine. And I really wanted to start by thanking you. Our previous video had an amazing amount of views thanks to your energy, your wisdom. Like, the video is over 2 million views right now. 8,000 people have commented. So I'm just here to thank you for that, and super thrilled to go deeper and answer questions from our audience. So thanks.
It's a pleasure. I mean, I'm here for going deeper.
Yeah, we will. I think it's nice to give our audience a sort of recap. And the way I thought in doing so is just by making us aware of the fact that being able to sit down with you here doing this interview is thanks to your technology. I mean, the photons that hit the sensors of these cameras, they will encounter silicon gate technology in these machines, right? And the electrons are then sort of put together in our computers to make videos, and they will come in YouTube using algorithms based on neural nets. Again, technology you pioneered in. And people will have clicked on these videos, probably using touchpad. Again, Federico Faggin technology you helped pioneering. So that's all that. So that's just amazing. And it could only be done with your sort of scientific, hardcore scientific mindset. But we are here now to dive deeper in what's at the beginning of that chain I just described. You sitting there, me sitting here, people watching at home. So the question I want to open with, who are we truly, Federico? You, me, people watching, who are we fundamentally?
We are not the body. We exist in a reality deeper than the space-time, matter, energy, the scientism believed to be all there is. And that here is the real collision of beliefs. that needs to be resolved. So we are not the body. We are beings that exist in a deeper reality where consciousness, free will exist. We control the body. The body is an instrument that we use to have an experience in this reality, which is by and large made up. It is made up by the information that hits our senses, transformed by our body, and perceived by the conscious field that we are. We are a field. We are not a finished, bounded entity.
Mm-hmm. And I think so many people, what resonated with people, they sense, they intuit, sort of adapt a truth here. And now you have a theory that describes it. And also a lot of people do wonder, if so, why am I so, why do I feel so isolated or separated? Why do I have such a strong sense of me, Hans, being an ego in space-time? And how can I experience what you are describing here? What's your answer to that?
Well, first of all, we are here to have an experience in order to know ourselves. But when I say to know ourselves, I don't mean to know ourselves as a body. If we believe to be the body, that's the first delusion, is that to believe that we are the body. So then if we think we are the body, well, then we start with the wrong foot. So we have to understand that we are a field. This field wants to experience aspects of itself, understand aspects of itself, that in this reality will actually be accentuated by the fact that the body will be almost organized in such a way that it will manifest those aspects that the self that we are, the largest, vaster self that we are, wishes to understand. And so we in a sense, are representative in this reality of the vaster self that we are. And the portion of us that believe to be the bodies is the ego. And the ego, believing to be the body, behaves like the body, and the body is conditioned to manifest what the vaster self wants to understand of itself.
Is that ego bit still part of that vaster consciousness? Is that also sort of in the satiety, sort of the conscious field?
Of course, it is part of the satiety. The satiety is the name that I use for a quantum field that has also consciousness and free will. I have to use a different name because
I think it's pretty cool though, but
the quantum field does not have any consciousness or any free will, according to the scientism, or so generally science today. So we have to use a different name.
Yeah.
And the fact that it is conscious and has free will, satiety is the proper name.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Satiety. But I think that we will definitely get also in this conversation again to sort of how you look on the quantum. And but I think once you make those steps, which we outlined in our previous conversations, which your postulate, like one is holistic, one wants to know itself.
Yeah.
And it starts knowing itself by communicating to parts of itself. And that process of communicating is our space-time reality, right? So we're living in a sort of consciousness speaking, writing to itself, right? That's the way to understand it.
Yeah.
More or less,
One, the totality of what exists knows itself through our own knowing ourselves, which requires communicating with each other. Because we are parts whole of one.
Check.
In other words, we are parts that contain the whole. The reality is holographic, in other words. And holographic means that the whole is contained in the part. I notice often that the cells of our body are built the same way. Each cell has the genome of the egg that created the entire organism. So each cell has the blueprints of the entire organism. So look at that. Even the body, which is a perishable thing, perishable construction, has the same holographic properties and organization.
And for people to understand your sort of cosmology, right? So if you're okay with that, let's start with the very, very beginning. So the classical story we know is sort of the Big Bang story. So we have the Big Bang, we have the formation of stars, then we have chemistry, and chemistry somehow, that's sort of a first miracle, you could say, leads to biology. No one truly understands how. And then biology leads somehow to consciousness. Also, again, no one truly understands how. But that's sort of the story we all grew up with, so people will know that story. Yeah. Then come you turn it around, because it's consciousness is not the end of the chain. It starts with consciousness. Yeah. Okay, all good. So that's a nice picture. But then you do also have a lot to explain, right? Because how, from being a one conscious field, do we get to sort of this here? I mean, it's also a crazy story in a sense. Yeah. But please explain your sort of line of reasoning there.
Yeah, well, scientism is materialist and reductionist. So scientism starts with the idea that there are separate aspects, separate parts, atoms, molecules, particles, they're separate. And so they're trying to understand the universe combining aspects, particles, atoms, and molecules, as if you could express and understand the whole using parts that are separated when their nature is not to be separated. This is what quantum physics, the quantum field theory have shown, that the foundational aspect of reality are the quantum fields of particles. So already quantum physics is saying everything is interconnected. And the interconnection comes from what is called quantum entanglement. The entanglement is that the aspects of the states of the fields, when they interact, they create properties in common that connects them independent of the distance. And therefore you have properties here that says that non-locality is the way the universe is built, where the whole idea of science up until the understanding that there is entanglement was that there is locality. In other words, properties and actions can only occur if you have interactions which are at the vicinity of where the species are, or where the atom or molecules or particles are. But in this case, there is what appears to be action at a distance, instantaneous action at a distance, which is incomprehensible with the way in which we understand, the world. And now it has been proven, the last experiment that proved, without any doubt that this must be so was done in 2014. So here we have in front of us a reality that says everything is interconnected. There are no parts, no separable parts. You cannot start with separable parts, then you have to start with the whole. And if you start from the whole, you have to explain then why the parts come out of the whole. This is a complete reversal from the way science in the beginning now becomes scientism, a belief system, a dogma says that the world has to be built this other way. No, in fact, probably 100 top physicists today want to start from the whole and derive the parts, because they have understood that trying to go the other way leaves you empty-handed. Yeah. In fact, string theory, which tried to explain reality from the parts, which are strings that vibrate, did not succeed. And it took about 80 years of hard work. At one point, 90% of the physicists, the theoretical physicists, were working on string theory. They didn't get anywhere. So that's telling you that no, we have to start with the whole. Wow, that's difficult, because the whole, not being able to being separated into parts, brings into question even the nature of mathematics. Because the nature of mathematics starts with parts, the sets that define that, this element is either in the set or outside the set. You have to find true and false. But if everything is interconnected, what is true and what is false? You see? There may be areas where they are both true and false. For example, look at the color. Let's take the color red and the color orange. Is there a boundary between the two? Can you define a boundary that says from this side of the boundary is red, the other side of the boundary is orange? Is that possible? No. There is a region where you can say is both orange and red, or is neither orange or red.
Yeah,
this is cool reality. Stuff. This is the deeper reality.
Yeah.
It's made that way. It is in our face. The colors, which are qualia, are that type of reality.
I love what you're saying in that sort of. I think it's nice for people to dive, as we now are in the quantum and discussing the oneness and interconnectedness. It makes me think about sort of John Wheeler, who came up with that participatory universe, right? And you have the Big Bang and we have the conscious observer, and he sensed that both are connected in a way we don't understand yet, right. And it's participatory. So, and basically, when you say sort of the red and the orange, if we, red and orange. If you would say red and orange, in that, where is it red? Where is it orange? Where's the observer? And an objective outside world, subject object divide. Where do you point it? And then the question becomes, that dualistic picture is naive. He knew that. I mean, and in quantum physicists now know that. Yeah. Subject object divide is arbitrary. Where
Absolutely.
To put the cut,
yeah.
And then we have to pick. Right. Then we're in this position. Are you putting your bets on an objective world, matter? And then saying somehow dualistic, I need to arrive at sort of that subject, or you put your bets on subjective experience, and you clearly are on that side, saying, okay, that's consciousness first. And I get that, but for people who find that hard to do, just grew up, but Federico, it's matter. I just have a body. It's a material universe. How can you say it starts with consciousness? What's your most simple reply to them to make that leap?
How can you get consciousness from matter that doesn't have any consciousness? How can more comes from less? You have to start there, because you cannot explain how matter can know itself. If it is matter, it shouldn't be conscious. And it is defined as non-conscious. So how can you get consciousness out of something that doesn't have it? Even worse, free will. How can you get free will from a world that is supposed to be deterministic? Objects in space and time are deterministic. And in quantum physics does not describe the motion of objects in space and time. The state of a field has nothing to do with, it doesn't describe reality. It describes all the possibilities that you could possibly measure of something, but with their probability. So it only can tell you what is possible to know about reality. That's not what is possible to know about reality. It's not reality. Because reality is what actually is shareable, right? We can all see the same thing. No quantum physics. In fact, quantum physics is actually pointing to the mind of the universe, to a quantum computer of the universe that makes predictions about what might happen. But what will happen is based on free will decisions of the fields, which are the components of this reality.
Einstein said, God doesn't play dice, right? And he pointed to he couldn't live with that idea that it's random. So I thought about that in preparing this interview, linking this to Einstein, because you would agree, it is not playing dice. It's free will. It's a decision.
Yeah, that's right.
Einstein,
because he believed in determinism, could make that leap.
Yeah, exactly.
And say, no, the fact that quantum physics only gives us probability of of whatever might happen, but it doesn't tell you what will happen. And so, there is a postulate that is essentially that says that from the probability to the actuality, many probabilities to one actuality, what actually manifests in space and time, nobody knows how that process works.
No, single particles we do not know, right?
It's called collapse of the wave function.
Yeah.
Okay. And nobody has an explanation for that. We know that it is random and it is non-algorithmic. So all of a sudden, what can be random and non-algorithmic? A free will decision. Of who? Of the field that you observe, not of the observer. See, in the past, there was this theory that the observer may collapse the wave function.
Yeah.
This is not what this theory is saying. What I'm talking about is the field that you observe, but in fact, the field that interacts and plays the role of an observer, because each field is observer, observed, and agent. All three. Every field plays all these three roles. Because there are only fields that interact with each other.
Yeah. So but here we definitely need to sort of pause and explain, because this is again your sort of, I call it like your cosmology, but it would be like the conscious field starting to in starting to wanting to know itself, so to speak. I'm trying to understand this. It starts communicating, and you say that you need symbols to communicate. You need symbols, and you need to agree on those symbols. Otherwise, you cannot talk. So that would be like consciousness reflecting on itself, and it would be the first, what Bernardo would call dissociation. I'm curious how you, though, reflect on that process, how we get from one to that first divide of it looking upon itself. It would need a symbol to communicate, and those symbols have to look like something, and they are sort of physical reality. But at a certain moment, that physical reality had sort of special features, life, right? Because stars is all that's physical. But then we had the magical moment where somehow it started to be able to recreate itself, like recreating symbols that sort of I write down, and then all of a sudden those symbols start doing stuff like, wow, and I created that. And then, but correct me if I'm wrong, I find a way to incarnate in that, like, wow, can I enter that? Like I built this, in your image in our previous conversation, we had the metaphor of the drone, right? You said the drone metaphor, okay? I create this drone, and I created the space where a drone flies. And then I all of a sudden notice, hey, wait a minute, there's a way for me to communicate in a drone. How cool would it be if I'm in that drone? That's amazing. And then the story gets, and there we get lost, right? Then we got, but is this a way to get it? I thought sort of how to get my head around it, well, based on a previous conversation.
Yeah. So let's start with a principle.
Yeah.
Okay. We have to start with everything, with the whole, with one. We cannot start with the parts. The parts are emanation of one. Now, there are parts because we experience parts. Even quantum theory says there are quantum fields, and those are considered separate, though they interact with each other. And when they interact, they entangle. So they're not really separate because that entanglement remains independent of space and time. So even that is not right. Okay, but this preconceived idea that we had to start with parts and that everything is material is weighing heavily on us as we try to figure out what's going on. So we had to get rid of that for a second. So let's think that one, which is defined as the totality of what exists, has three properties. Is dynamic, holistic, and wants to know itself. Dynamic and holistic is what quantum physics is already saying. All that exists is never the same instant after instant, keeps on changing, changes all the time. And everybody agrees with that. And is holistic. Everything is interconnected. It's not made of separable parts. This is what entanglement has shown. The world is like this. I have added and wants to know itself. Why am I doing that? Because the evidence is that consciousness and free will, which are the aspects of wanting and the aspect of knowing itself, because for one to know itself, it must be conscious, it must experience itself, and in that experience, know itself, must be fundamental, because they cannot be explained with something that doesn't have those properties. Matter without consciousness and without free will cannot create consciousness and free will, period. Lots of people have tried to figure it out. Myself tried to figure out how to make a robot that was conscious. I couldn't do it. There is no way that you can transform electrical signals, biochemical signals, any kind of signal, any kind of information into consciousness and free will. There is no way. So you got to start there. So if you start there now, all of a sudden, and by the way, if you start there, when you say one also has, since one wants to know itself, where does it come the self-knowing? Where is self-knowing of one coming from? It cannot come from nothing. Well, it's coming from a potentiality, some possibilities. That potentiality is actually the best fit for explaining the quantum vacuum. Because in quantum physics, there is the quantum vacuum, which is what is left when you take all the fields out of reality. And there is a quantum vacuum that has an inner energy with a density which is astronomical. It's incredible how much energy there is in what's supposed to be vacuum.
Crazy.
And this vacuum is kind of boiling up and is creating forms, but they are not forms. They are kind of chaotic things that appear, disappear, and they are called foam. But this stuff is what is there before there is anything. Before there is form, there is this quantum vacuum. Mm-hmm. So that's the potential of one.
That's new. This is not in.
This is a little further, into connection between, physics and spirituality, right? So now, the first time that one knows itself, because there has to be a first time where one knows itself.
Yeah.
At least in the narrative, okay? Because the question is, what is time? We have to figure out what is time. Okay, so let's not go too far. Let's start from the first time that one knows itself. What happens? One brings into existence what it knows. So knowing and existing are two faces of the same coin.
Yeah.
So now we now understand what knowing is. Knowing is an experience. That's me. One say, oh, that's me. It knows itself.
Yeah.
It brings at the same time that it knows itself, it brings it into existence. Okay? And it must be a part whole of itself. Why? It's not made of parts. One is not made of parts. It cannot see itself just a little bit. It's got to see itself completely in the direction in which it looks at itself. What is direction? The direction is the identity of what it brings into existence. That's the identity of the Seidad. It brings into existence a Seidad, a part whole of itself. That now, being a part whole, must want to know itself. That part wants to know itself, just like one wants to know itself.
Yeah.
And it can create other parts out of itself. Just exactly like a cell that duplicates.
That's exactly what I was wanting to say.
That's why life starts with one. It doesn't start with a cell.
I had that image of one. And I was wanting to say to you, that's the true Big Bang. That moment of self.
Yeah, the Big Bang is the moment where you go from nothing, the quantum vacuum, the potential existence, to one knows itself.
But like a full, Federico, would it be like a full self-knowledge, like a full part whole, like a full copy of itself, so to speak?
Well, it contains the totality of itself, but within that direction in which it has known itself.
Yeah, exactly. That perspective on itself.
That perspective.
Like a snapshot from myself.
Next time around, it sees itself in another perspective. It brings into existence another part whole of itself.
Okay. Then we have those part wholes.
That's how parts whole are created. They are just like cells.
Yeah.
They're cells out of it, the egg being, one is the egg that creates another cell, another part whole.
Yeah.
Just like life, man. Same way.
Yeah. And for people who think this is crazy stuff, I mean, the other story...
It's crazy stuff to
but
think that life comes from nothing.
Yeah, exactly. The other story is crazy as well. The other story is just as crazy. To start saying that we need to build up stuff, it's called the combination problem. And it's a very profound philosophical problem, practical problem. It's a problem panpsychism has. And this is sort of the decomposition problem, how we get from one to those separate parts. And I do think, in a sense, nature is giving us more metaphorical images that we can relate to that are in favor of that, that we see splitting off.
Of course.
Yeah, that's cool stuff.
But it explains, for example, why life has to occur. Because, and it starts from the concept of self-knowing, knowing, which is foundational. Even science is about knowing, for Christ's sake. It's not about something else. Yeah. It's about knowing.
And then we have, Federico, so then the knower, that which knows, so that's that part whole, that Seidad, that now can also start knowing, right?
Yeah, okay. She knows itself, but that Seidad knows itself with that identity, with that point of view.
Yeah.
It's like the Seidad becomes conditioned to observe reality with that same point of view with which one knew itself when it created this Seidad.
Yeah. And then that which is known, so the knowing bit starts knowing itself, has to, because I'm hinting at where sort of we get to physical reality, how we get to information, what you call sort of information and physical, sort of life information and the physical, how we get there.
Yeah. Anything that a Seidad knows for the first time brings into existence the same way that one brought into existence, the Seidad when he knew itself that way, same way. In other words, any new knowing is a creation, is not a combination of stuff, is a new creation. That's where creation comes from.
Yeah. And sort of physics, the metaphor physics gives us is the collapse of the wave function.
Yeah.
Because that's potentiality, and then when we want to gain knowledge, we have to collapse, and then we have a particle.
Yeah. But that is, you see, the crucial thing is that knowing is about meaning. It's not about symbols. So far, I haven't even mentioned symbols. The symbols are what are needed for the Seidads to communicate with each other. Why? Because what they feel, their own experience and their own knowing cannot be duplicated. Exactly the property of quantum fields. The quantum state of a field cannot be reproduced. Now you see the connection of what I'm talking about with quantum physics, explaining why it has to be that way.
Yeah.
Because the self-knowing, that's a property of consciousness. It's not a property of information. The information of a computer can be copied as many times as you want. But the love that I feel for my son, I cannot even give it to him.
No.
I'm the only one to know that love. How do I know it? By feeling it, by experiencing it, by qualia. But qualia are the bringers of meaning. What I really care about that feeling is, what does it mean? And the meaning of information, or quantum information in this case, is the essence of the spiritual aspects of reality, of who we are. So there is body, mind, and spirit. The body is classical information. The mind is quantum information. And the spirit is meaning, the meaning of quantum information.
That's beautiful. This is also you.
That's a step forward.
I'm somewhat myself sort of find it hard to distinguish between mind and spirit, right? Where's that boundary? And also in sort of how we can experience that boundary.
Yeah.
This is the mind, Federico. Oh no, this is my spirit talking. How's that? Where's that boundary?
But the way to understand is, every Seidad, and of course one itself, when it knows itself in these three ways. So body, mind, and spirit cannot be separated. Remember, just like the colors. In fact, a good way to think of this is the color wheel. You know the color wheel?
Yeah.
Okay, red, green, and blue, right? So if red is the body, green is the mind, and blue is the spirit, they have overlap regions. There is no single boundary between red and green. There is an overlap. What is that overlap? What does it represent? That represents what I've called live information, quantum and classical information, the information that describes life, biological life, which is not classical information. You need that kind of new type of information. It is at the overlap between body and mind. What is the overlap between mind and spirit?
That's an interesting one.
Qualia. The quantum state, the quantum states that become experience in the consciousness of the entity, which is this aspect, the spiritual aspect that has consciousness, free will, and identity. It's in the spirit. It's not in the mind. It's not in the body. What is the overlap between, and this is the new thing, because normally we think of spirit, mind, and body in linear fashion.
Yeah, hierarchy. Yeah.
No, in this way it's a circle. So there has to be an overlap between spirit and body. What is there?
Yeah, tell me.
The permanent memory of the experience, of the self-knowing of one. Space, time, and matter. Permanent matter. Because the memory must be permanent. Remember that I said that in the previous conversation that we had, that the quantum state keeps on changing. So you need to put, if you need to remember the quantum state, you need to put that, whatever happens, your experience in the quantum state must be put into symbols, into a permanent symbols, so that you can recall your experience. You need memory, because the experience only lasts in a very short period of time, in the present. And in the present, you must put into memory what you experience. And so there is no past. What you experience becomes permanent memory. So there is no past. You experience in the present. In the present, you got to put in memory your experience. So you transform what you think of time into matter, permanent matter, which is what gives you the memory of what you just experienced. Also, in that same present, you want to predict what might happen in the future, right? That's what the mind does. That's what the quantum computer, which is mind, does for you. It can give you probabilities of what might happen in the future. But what might happen in the future is exactly what you need to decide to express, or the seities need to decide to express. So all of a sudden, and that happens also in the present. So in the present, you have the memory of the past experience and the prediction of the future. And also in the present, you make the decision of what to manifest. What you manifest then becomes the new body.
Wow.
Because it has to be in the shareable. That's like the display of the system. The display which is where we all exist, where all physical things exist in a sort of a display of reality, which is the body.
Yeah.
But there is also behind that body, there is a computer.
And the
computer is a quantum computer, which is what I call mind.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond that. And that's what most people don't. Some people got that you need body and mind, but they didn't get the spirit. The meaning of the experience. So what do you put into, you cannot copy the state of the field, you cannot do that. But you can put into symbol the meaning of that experience.
Yeah.
The meaning of the state that you experience, the qualia that you experience, that you can put into symbols.
I'm trying to bring it back to exactly how I'm sitting here with you. I mean, the overlap, we're literally talking physical body. Are we talking my physical body here? So this overlap the spirit body overlap manifests itself right here then, right?
Yeah, it manifests in this shareable. This is shareable reality. Think of space, time, and matter, matter energy as the display of the classical display of a quantum computer.
Yeah, and a memory display. It gives us all states. It's a memory.
But then the interpretation of the bits that exist in that display is in our consciousness.
Yeah, it's again in consciousness.
It's not in space and time.
It's again in consciousness. But then the reality as we perceive it is this big library of experience states of consciousness. It's a library of content of consciousness. Would that be a way to put it? Our experience, right? Our experience, the meaning of our past experience is also something accessible only by my consciousness. It's not in space and time. No.
That is in some, but it is in some kind of space-time matter, but it's not the kind of space-time matter that we normally think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. For example, right now, the only hypothesis that I have for the matter that will represent permanent memory of the experience will be dark matter, because dark matter doesn't interact with real matter or energy. It's just something we just discovered 50 years ago. We discovered that we have to have dark matter, which is a lot more percentage-wise than the matter that we knew.
Yeah.
Okay, so dark matter could be a candidate for structures that are permanent and represent the memory of the experience of the deities and the experience of one.
Yeah.
Also, the expansion of the universe has to occur if there is a continuing self-knowing of one that keeps on growing. Now, you need
that knowledge needs to be stored
somewhere. You need more and more space time.
More space time as a hard drive for that experience.
Yeah, what we call space time.
Yeah.
But this is all, this is highly speculative at this point, but it gives you a sense of the way I'm thinking.
It's super interesting. It's also highly abstract, and I think it's very hard to follow. I find it hard to follow, but I do think it's just important to notice that one should take that leap, that first postulate of your postulates, and which are close to idealism. They are idealist. Mm-hmm. Once you say all it's consciousness, then everything you perceive reflects back, and it's just consciousness reflecting back on itself, and then it does start making sense. It's just we are so biased in our we're so immersed in our materialist thinking.
But Hans, it's
hard to follow.
It's hard to follow quantum physics. Quantum physics, the same physicists that know the equations say, well, I don't understand what they mean. It's actually crazy if you think about it. Now, if you start from this postulate that I said earlier, you can explain why quantum physics must have those properties that nobody has understood. Come on, I mean, this actually explains. Now, there is a postulate that explains what nobody has ever been able to understand. And to me, that's a big step forward.
Absolutely.
Now the quantum fields are conscious, and therefore you can interpret now the collapse of the wave function as a free will decision of that quantum field. Is the one that decides where to show the electrons in the double slit experiment.
Yeah.
Is the field that interacts with the field of the instrument. But that interaction is the field that decides, I'm going to show the electron over here for whatever reason it does. That's his own will, free will. You see?
I think
now you explain, otherwise everything is just chaos, it's just randomness.
Yeah.
We explain life as randomness. How can you explain life with randomness? The same way that we explain, consciousness with something that doesn't have consciousness. Same way. We pull it off, out of a hat.
Yeah. Love it when you're fired up like that. It's amazing. I like it. My take on it is, Federico, I've been exploring for the last year the foundations of physics, talking to like super smart physicists that you will understand much better than I do. But what I did get from them and visiting these conferences is sort of this, what they call this epistemic turn, right? That now also in the foundations of physics, they won't go as far as you, but they are saying, wait a minute, this is not about objective reality, it's about our knowledge of reality.
That's right.
So that's a bit sort of still Copenhagen interpretation.
Yeah.
But then they still shy away from stuff like, they want to stay away from what an observer really is or what measurement really is.
Yeah.
They just say it's about knowledge, right? That's as far as they now go. Sometimes I think that it takes a deep, profound personal experience to be able to make that leap. And I to what degree do you think you would be able to come up with this theory hadn't you had that deeply personal experience?
I would not been able to.
No.
No, because you have to experience yourself as a part whole. Otherwise, how can you say that there are parts whole?
Yeah.
It's such a different kind of explanation. Then after you have experienced yourself as a part whole, then you can understand that our cells are also parts whole of the organism. But I never read in any book of biology that our cells are parts whole of the organism. I can say it because I understand that I am a part whole of one. And therefore, and also that the nature has a fractality, the same structure is repeated at a different scale. I mean, a cell of our body is just like weak field of one. Now, there may be many, many steps in between, but at least there are, we have the smallest one that we know and the largest one, which is us being part whole of one.
Yeah. And but I do think, amongst scientists and physicists, it wouldn't count, and I'm not saying I'm saying that, but it wouldn't count as a strength if people, the fact that you have had to had a deep personal spiritual, it wouldn't count as a strength. It would be suspicious, right?
Yes.
Because we want to be objective, right? And even in psychedelic sciences, it is sort of, people are wrestling ethically. Should I myself undergo a deep psychedelic journey, or should I stay outside? And it just, I don't have a very strong opinion here. The only thing is that it all relies on a basic object-subject divide that you think you can uphold as if there is this position as a scientist.
But look, you can find out by yourself, not by taking drugs. I don't suggest to take drugs to experience yourself as a part whole. You have the capacity to experience yourself as a part whole without drugs. Otherwise, how can you be sure that you don't know?
Yeah.
So you experience yourself as a part whole. Each one of us can. You don't need a big atom smasher, right? You are now believing what a scientist is telling you by having used an instrument, multi-billion-dollar instruments to tell you what reality is. Now I'm telling you a deeper reality, the most profound reality, and you can find out by yourself. Okay?
No Large Hadron Collider.
No Large Hadron Collider. Isn't that better?
Absolutely. Please tell us how can people, because it is a big question.
You got to want to know. You got to, the same way I wanted to know.
It starts
I was
with wanting.
Unhappy about myself. I knew that I was responsible for my unhappiness because as an entrepreneur, I found out that the buck stops there, right? So I have to accept that the good or bad of the company depends on me being in charge of the company that I started. So once I made that step, meaning I am responsible for most things or everything that happens in my life. Okay, I made that. Then when I found out that I was unhappy and I pretended to be happy, I said, well, I am responsible for that stuff. So now, being responsible, I want to know. Because how can I be responsible if I don't have the capacity to then find out? It would be a joke that the universe is playing on me. No, I trusted the universe not to take me to a loop, right? I trusted it and I said, I want to know. And I got the experience. I didn't know, I never read anything like what I experienced. I could not even imagine that it would be possible to have that experience, right? So, but it came. The same can happen to you if you want.
Yeah, it has to do with truly wanting to
find out.
Yeah.
But why do we want to know ourselves, right? What is so fundamental? One wants to know itself.
Yeah.
We want to know ourselves. Same thing. Part all.
Have you continued sort of, once you had that deep experience and you wanted it, did it become something, a place where you found your way to go to whenever you feel now it's time again to connect to spirit, so to speak, if I'm talking spiritually?
Oh, well, I mean, that experience drove me to spend 20 years of my time, at 30-40% of my time, to explore, to understand that experience. So that experience had the power to drive me to spend, 1/3 of my time, more than 1/3 of my time, to find out about and understand that experience. And it took 20 years to arrive to the hypothesis that consciousness and free will must be foundational.
And Federico, is that theory in that sense also, is it that interaction of body, spirit, mind that also led you to the theory? Because very often science is associated with mind and body, of course. We study body within our minds, and then and spiritual people then start being critical about that. Oh, those scientists, and they, Federico wanting to grasp it with his mind. The yogis knew, Buddha knew, and we have now this guy from Italy. Sure, he's smart. He invented the microprocessor, but so funny. He wants to grasp this intellectually, and they knew. What's your response to that? They already knew.
That response is that is the same arrogant point of view of scientism that believes to know everything.
Oh, but then the spiritual version of it.
The spiritual version of it, same stuff.
The Essentia Foundation is all about the metaphysics of idealism, also known as non-dualism. And Federico Faggin's theory roots this ancient intuitive worldview in science. And this is where the sponsor of this video comes in. Consensus is an AI-powered science search engine that lets you instantly search over 220 million peer-reviewed papers with direct links to the studies. For instance, if I ask, do neural processes explain consciousness? Consensus immediately surveys the most highly cited studies and papers and presents me with a consensus meter. You can directly click through the scientific sources, for example, this highly cited paper by Christoph Koch, who we recently featured on our channel. If I now ask the million-dollar question, is the universe fundamentally mental or material? The honest answer is now that there is no scientific consensus on this metaphysical question. But I do get a comprehensive overview of the scientific debate with all its different claims and the strength of their empirical support. This makes Consensus a great research tool that stands out in comparison to other LLMs because it is not clouded by blog posts, social media, or other pseudoscientific sources. And it helps me in creating podcasts like these because I need to get a quick, efficient, and reliable overview of where the science actually is. Consensus can be used for free, but if you want access to the pro features, you can click in the link below in our description to get a 1-week free trial and a 30% discount for the first year thereafter. Since this is the first sponsor that the Essentia Foundation presents, I do want to make an ethical statement. Our foundation is editorially completely independent, and we're not affiliated with any of our sponsors, and we only accept sponsorships if they are compatible with our mission and scientific standards. And now back to Federico. Finding answers within, whether we call that spirit, one, those are all labels, of course, in the end. And then coming back, I'm talking about, in your theory, something that is not shareable in a sense. It's non-clonable. We know that. So I need a translation there. So what is the truth value? How can we sync it? How can it lead to a new science that sort of incorporates this in its methodology, right? That scientists start meditating, start accessing other states of consciousness, and we can talk about that as if that's something exotic. But I always like to mention the fact that Einstein himself would say that general relativity came to him sort of in dream states. Tesla, we can mention. I mean, there are numerous people, and now you are openly saying that your theory also sort of, in a sense, came to you, right?
Of course.
But how to make a system of a rigorous science out of that, a methodology, a new science?
Well, basically, if you take this seriously, you begin to investigate it using the rationality and the experiments. But now the experiments must be both inner and outer, because you cannot talk about consciousness if you do not accept that there is an inner reality. You have to start with with a postulate. The postulate is that consciousness starts from the field that we are, not from the body that we are. Because if you start with scientism, we are the body. So everything that happens in us should come from the body. Okay. I don't know if you know the experiment of the rubber arm. The experiment of the rubber.
Please explain it to our viewers.
The experiment of the rubber arm is that you have your arm here, then you put just a barrier so that you don't see your arm. You see another arm next to it, which is made of rubber, and then you kind of cover it up in such a way, with something similar to what you were wearing. So and now you only see that rubber arm.
Yeah.
And then you start stroking, with a feather, stroking both hands.
Yeah.
Okay. After a while, your consciousness shifts from the true arm to the fake arm. After that, if you, with a pin, you put a pin on the fake, and you ask, do you feel? Yes, I feel.
Pinching, yeah.
And you put the pin on the true hand, you don't feel anything.
Amazing.
Now, that type of experiment is being used to prove that consciousness is epiphenomenal. But in fact, it actually is a much more of a proof that it's not epiphenomenal, because how can you feel pain in something that cannot feel pain? You see?
Yeah, and exactly.
But that tells you how your preconceived ideas force you to decide, that one thing is true or false, and you present it that way as a scientist, and then then basically you perpetrate a total misunderstanding of what's going on.
Also, I would say if you pinch the arm, then your real arm and you don't feel it anymore is such strong proof that there's something profoundly strange here. Because, a physicalist would say those signals, we know, we measure them, and now all of a sudden in my brain, those signals do not enter anymore.
That's right.
Yeah.
You see? It's really, this actually is a proof that consciousness is deeper than the body, goes beyond the body, should be a proof of that, or certainly a plausible proof of that, as opposed to a proof that it is epiphenomenal. Yeah. Because it's not in the body. Because you start with the presumption that consciousness has to be in the body. Therefore, if it's out of the body, it must be epiphenomenal. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Crazy.
And also, of course, we know we are at the conference of science of consciousness, and there's a lot of psi research on stuff like out-of-body experiences, extraocular vision, you name it. You must know sort of the phenomena, right? Phenomena that physicalist scientists they cannot even study it because it would point to anomalies, right? So you don't want to go there.
That's right. Nobody wants to go there. Right?
Yeah. And you do have, I'm curious, sort of just speculating or thinking about the mechanisms there. If the Seidad has an out-of-body experience and it can see itself, it is not using the quantum classical device, which is my brain at that moment, right? Because it's accessing it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
What mechanism is it using then?
Well, there has to be a body associated with that.
I'd say so, yeah.
Absolutely. Which also shows that there must be aspects of physics that go beyond what we understand in physics.
Yeah.
Because it's called astral body in the in the literature that describe this kind of phenomena, and but clearly, if you see yourself in the bed, where are the eyes that see, right?
Exactly.
Clearly, they are not your eyes; they are the eyes of this body that now your consciousness, your field is now using to have this experience.
Yeah.
You see, so it shows that there may be a hierarchies of bodies as well.
Do you have any clue how that? I mean, it could be. Of course, it could be theoretically. Also, in your theory, that could be endless.
What?
Could there be sort of an endless hierarchy of different,
no, I don't think
different
so. It's
bodies?
not turtles, not turtles all
not
the way.
Turtles all the way down. No, but people who have had deeply life-changing spiritual experiences, encountering entities, angels, you name it, God, deceased ones. That could all fit in this theory. That could all be sort of higher dimensional.
Yes, it could fit. It could fit. No, certainly it can be explained with this, with this theory.
Yeah.
It cannot be explained with scientism. In fact, you have to say this is bull.
Yeah, and it's of course it's important to say it doesn't prove it, but it can explain it.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah. Which I find super fascinating.
Yeah. But very often we use even extraordinary things like this thing of the arm that I mentioned earlier to actually pretend to prove your point, which is the consciousness is epiphenomenal.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
When in fact it proves exactly the opposite.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. And I mean, science is in the end about how nature behaves, right? And it's not about what ought to be. It's about what is and not what ought to be. It's not about ethics. That's sort of our human problem, that we have divisions of good and bad. Yeah. What are your thoughts there in your theory? Is there some sort of higher morality?
If the foundational aspect of reality are fields that have these three properties, body, mind, and spirit, which are inseparable, how can you separate matter from ethics? You cannot. How can you separate the stuff? You can only separate the stuff if you believe in reductionism.
But you, good and bad at one moment had to originate from one, right? And our mythologies will. I mean, I was brought up Christian. I assume you were brought up Catholic, of course.
But I'm not a.
And we like to start our story, right? As Christians, also Catholics like to start their story sort of dualistically, like God and Satan. But if you just read the Bible, we can all read that it's the fallen son. That's
I've based. That's why I speak of spirituality and other religions. Religions go beyond spirituality, building a structure, a dogmatic structures on top of spiritual experiences of the founders of those religions.
But I do like to dive a bit deeper, if you're okay with that, and make it personal for me as well. Because ever since my journey into idealism, reading Bernardo's work, who's also he's not agnostic about ethics, but he does see sort of that mind at large. Bernardo wouldn't say that it doesn't care, but would say it is not metacognitive. It doesn't know what it's doing, so to speak, at that level. And that is always, ever since I left my Christian faith, have been sort of my sort of struggle. How do you get to sort of a new ethics if it is not sort of godly, ordained, good and evil? And I could see the problem already in Christian thinking, that it had to come from one. So somehow there was a oneness that started dividing, and then started to have preferences, saying this is good, this is bad. And here we are in a world with good and evil, things we call good and evil, and suffering and all of that. You can hear I'm puzzled here.
Yeah, okay. My sense of that is that what we call bad is absence of good, just like darkness is absence of light. So there is no ontological evil, because if it was ontological evil, there would be no salvation. There would be no, you can never destroy on something that is real.
Yeah.
Okay? So it must be a misunderstanding or a miscomprehension or some sort of, something that needs to be understood and repaired. In understanding it, you repair it. You find that it was a misunderstanding. And so that's the way I think.
Interesting.
So there is no evil in this sense of ontological evil.
No, exactly. Yeah. But there is sometimes an absence of light.
Undeniably so.
Yeah.
But especially in this life. But this life, I see it as this reality is a constructed reality. It's not, what we think is this table is real in the sense of, ontologically real. It's not ontologically real in the same sense that we as fields are real. This is construction by the interaction of a body that is made of the same matter with this table, interacting with each other, and in our consciousness creating the impression that there is reality. Aha.
And how does this work for you personally? Just when you go about in your day, in your work, does it sort of sitting here with me, how does that play into sort of just your daily consciousness going about? Does it change your behavior directly, this awareness? Do you feel more one with people? Have you like profoundly changed your behavior, or how does that work?
Oh, absolutely. I was very unhappy.
Yeah.
And now, of course, I was very unhappy, but I didn't even know what happiness was supposed to be. I was probably, the idea of being happy was probably the idea of a 3 or 4 year old that never quite, asked himself, what does it mean to be happy? Because I always put happiness after I had reached certain goals in life, right? So it was only after I checked all the boxes that I thought I should be happy, and I wasn't. So, only then it was, why am I not? And then at that time I was studying neuroscience, and, I was doing neural networks. I'm talking about almost 40 years ago. And and so it was at that time that the idea of consciousness as a property that nobody understood came to mind. And so then I wanted to understand consciousness, because it was consciousness that made me unhappy. So I wanted to understand this quality that we have called consciousness. And that's when I had the experience, the awakening experience. And then I began a journey that took me about 20 years from 1990 to 2009, roughly, to actually, to conclude that consciousness and free will and identity had to be foundational properties as a hypothesis. And then I decided to stop what I was doing and dedicate myself to united science and spirituality, starting from the premise that consciousness and free will must be fundamental.
And would you say that your Seidad, who you truly are, made a free will decision, because that's what I'm really thinking, to be unhappy, for you to be so unhappy that you would start this journey and sit here now to bring this message to the world, so that in the end it was all free will decision by the Seidad, knowing it all. This is what people sometimes describe, right? In near that they get back and say, what I thought it was so miserable was actually just all meant to be.
Yeah. Well, I believe that clearly this way of thinking means that clearly we have more than one life. It doesn't make any sense to only have this life. Now, it may be that someone may have just one life, but it's much more meaningful that you have to repeat, many lives in order to understand deeper aspects of this. It's the Seidad that wants to understand aspect of itself. The ego is an emanation of the Seidad in order to know itself, not the ego to know itself. The Seidad wants to know itself. The ego is a gopher of the Seidad. Okay, so when we think
the Seidad needs the ego also. It needs it.
Oh yeah, it needs the ego is the operator, if you want, of this body. That believes to be the body, and so is behaving in the way the Seidad wants to, in some crazy ways, and the Seidad wants that ego, that entity to behave in order to see better, understand better why, what is it that it doesn't understand about itself. See, so it's not the ego that is supposed to figure it out. If you think that the ego, that you are to figure it out, you are going to screw it up for sure, because you don't have the capacity. You don't even know why you're here, right? As an ego, I don't know why I'm here. I'm beginning to suspect why I'm here, but only because I have awakened to the fact that I'm part of a vaster entity. Without that awakening, I would continue to be unhappy, perhaps, and kind of, do whatever, whatever I was going to do. But I think that it was my job to come here, go through this journey, figure it out. I could have missed it, and then I would have to repeat it. But if I succeeded, then I continue to go into this path and do whatever I'm doing. And that's why I feel so energetic about, because I have this mission. I see it. I perceive it. That's what I want. And I'm happy, but not in the happy-go-lucky kind of thing. I'm happy because I know that I'm doing what I came here to do.
And everyone has something they need to do, or if
yeah, even if you don't know what you're doing, okay? Yeah. Because in no matter what you do, you're going to show to the Seidad that you are the issues that she is here to find out. So by your good or bad action that you do, you're showing the aspect that Seidad wants to find out. It just look like a simulation, Just like when you simulate an equation in a computer, you want to find out under these parameters, with these parameters, these initial conditions, what happens. You see the behavior. Wow. And then say, well, let me change the initial condition. So that's another life, and then you see, and so on. And so eventually you get this sense of what this equation contains and all these kind of possibilities that are contained in this entity called that equation.
Yeah, and it also makes me think of your conocere and sapere, the knowing and the knowledge, right? And that the knowledge keeps on expanding, and the knowing cannot beforehand know everything that's to be known, right? It has to go through that process. What helped me, I'm curious what your thoughts are also with your Christian background. When I made a video on Carl Jung's book on the answer to Job, about the deep meaning of suffering, or an explanation where Jung didn't buy sort of the story that God knew all along, right? So they had this... No, Job is good, and he gave Satan permission to just hit Job with all that suffering. And Jung said, no, probably Yahweh, in the story, God didn't have that awareness. And it is through sort of Job complaining to him at the end of the story of the book of Job that God realizes, I put that good guy gave him a pretty rough ride. And maybe that wasn't such a good idea. And then Jung, this is all speculation and theology, but Jung says, okay, that led to sort of the incarnation of Christ. And this reading brought me a bit back to Christian thinking, that I think, this I can relate to. Because can you relate to that, sort of that story that we bring something back, like we going through this life, like truly bring knowledge to the Seidad that it sort of can expand on?
Well, most Christian religions, the God is omniscient, right?
Yeah.
That's now the place I start. I start with one wanting to know itself. It means that, in fact, it knows very little in the beginning, and and as it knows itself, but it knows itself by creating entities that know themselves, because it connects all the entities from within. So it knows the experience of every entity, but it's not the sum of the experiences. Is the quantum superposition of all those experiences, which is much more than the sum. One is more than the sum of the parts. In quantum physics, this is true. In classical physics, it's not. The sum of the parts is the whole, but it's just the sum of the parts. There is nothing more than the sum of the parts. That's what in chemistry, an atom is much more than the sum of the properties of the protons and neutrons and electrons that form that atom. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's that's the creative aspect of one, and so we have to really go there. And if you start with one that evolves, then the evolution of the knowing of one is the evolution of the universe. So the explain evolution by the self-knowing of one, evolving as one knows itself. Everything gets more complex and so on. Not out of randomness. How can you make better things by changing them randomly? That's silly to think that you can do better by just casual combinations. And besides, you cannot explain creation. Creation goes beyond the combination of what already exists.
So also
for example, an atom of hydrogen is much more than the sum of the capacity, the property of the proton and the electron that make the atom.
Yeah.
It has completely new properties. That's the creative aspect. Where do those properties come from? From the quantum vacuum, which is the potentiality of the knowing of one. But that is the material aspect, meaning is the symbolic aspect. The atom of hydrogen is not an entity, it's not a conscious entity. It's the field whose state is the atom of hydrogen, which is the entity that is conscious as an identity and has free will. You see?
Yeah.
So we call the atoms and molecules and so on as if they were ontology. No, they're states of the field, they're symbols, they're not objects.
Yeah, we are looking at the ocean here. There are drops of the ocean, behavior of the ocean, and it's all the ocean. Yeah. Of course, in your theory, it helps if you can sort of have that. Awakening is sort of a loaded term in a sense, because it's so much huge in so many different ways. But it does feel as if you are making a plea for that, sort of for people to awaken to that deeper reality.
Yeah, it's realize that we are not the body, and if you, as long as you believe that you are the body, that there is no way that you're going beyond the limits of the body, and in fact that's exactly what's wrong today, especially in the context of AI, artificial intelligence, basically being able to imitate us so well that it's difficult to tell what is artificial and what is real. But the real part of us is not the body. The real part of us, the one that understands, the one that, has free will and so on, is not in the body.
But this is really important what you're hitting here right now, because I think so many people are thinking that ChatGPT is about to become conscious or is already conscious because they're having such wonderful personal chats and can really experience empathy from the machine.
It appears that the experience is empathy, but...
Yeah, please, Federico, just take some time to... I know it's sort of asking you what you've already explained, but to those people, the inventor of... the first microprocessor, please explain why that is a fantasy.
Because the AI is simply repeating the symbolic aspects of... See, I have to take a step back, okay? So what is information for science? For science, information is simply the co-logarithm of the probability that a certain symbol manifests in a series of symbols, okay? So the more probable a symbol, the lower is the content of information of that symbol. Nothing to do with meaning. For us, when I say I got information, I mean I got meaning from the symbol. So the essence of information for me is the meaning of symbols. Completely different than what science is talking about. So we use the term information scientifically with something that has little to do with what information is for us. Major problem here. Even worse when we call artificial intelligence, we call intelligence what is not intelligence. Because intelligence is about the meaning of information. It's not about the symbol, whether it appears or not, or how probable it is to appear or not. You see, we have a major problem here. And this lends itself to be abused by the powers to be, and to, basically to control human beings, control society. That's not good. So, a computer is not conscious. A conscious experience is private. The program and the data of a computer is not private, can be copied as many times as you want. Already you see the difference between what I'm saying as a theory of consciousness and what science is saying. And you know that you can copy programs of computers and data of computers. So, also, what I feel is much more than what I can say about what I feel. In a computer, that's it. All that the computer says is all there is. There is nothing more because there is no experience in a computer. Again, big difference between our consciousness, the sense, our meaning, the meaning of love. I mean, you cannot even tell to the person that you love because you know that there is more where there is that love. The love is a depth that goes beyond what you can say, but you know there is something to find out. So that love also has the power to make you want to find now what it means, to explore it, to go beyond.
Yeah.
See, that computers don't have that. Computers, they are algorithmic machines. So if you give them a question from that series of words, they find in their world of symbols, the next symbols that has the highest probability to follow the symbol that you already given. That's it. There is no meaning. It's just a simple computation. But computation has nothing to do with meaning. We are the one that give the meaning to the output of a computation, even in a computer. When we do a simulation and we see a picture in the display, is the display having an experience of what it shows you? No, you are the one having an experience of what the display shows to you, right?
Yeah. And you said in our previous conversation that AI is not the beginning of a new era, but it marks the end of one.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I hope that the AI ends the era of scientism. It shows that we are more than machines.
Yeah.
By exactly the reasoning that I just went through.
Yeah.
And more. So AI is just showing us a fake copy of what we are. And so once you realize that you're more than that, then the spell is broken. But you get to realize it within yourself, not because I tell you. Every one of us has to find out who he is by an experience of who he is, not by reading a book and repeating what it. That's what AI does.
Yeah.
They repeat what we told them. They recombine what we told them, and they give another combination of what we already told them. That's not understanding. That's recombining. Changing the chairs in the room, but we put the chairs, we put the room, we put the table, and AI simply rearranges it.
And what's your biggest fear now? Because developments are going so fast now in this space. Are you hopeful? I mean, you just said what your hope is, but are you hopeful?
AI can be very useful, but my fear is that it will, the smart people will become smarter, and the not so smart people will become dumber. Just like the rich gets richer and the poor get poorer, because the smart people will use AI with understanding, and they can ask different questions, understand more, get new inputs out of which they will put their own creativity into it.
Yeah.
The not so smart people will be happy with what the AI tells them, and so they don't use their critical sense. And next time they will not even come up with with the right question.
Yeah, that's
not good. That's not good.
What in your opinion is happiness? What is it to be energetically alive as you are? I mean, what's that? What's that spark?
Well, you see, when you find out something new, you get it. You have an intuition, or even more important, a new understanding when you have been struggling to understand, and you finally get it. There is a burst of happiness, energy. Got it. Yeah, I got it. Right. I mean, where does it come from? It comes from your deepest part, because that's what we are here for. We are here to know each other. So if I know myself, or I know another like myself, and any new knowledge is a creation. It wasn't there before. See, a free will decision is a creation. It's not something that can be predicted. There is no algorithm. So we live in the creative space,
and it is in this
space.
In consciousness space, but it is in the information space, us interacting, and the physical space that somehow consciousness get enriched. It can learn, and it then has these moments of excitement.
But it also learns when there is no body. So in fact, it might learn much more without a body. But here is here expressly to understand certain aspects of self.
Yeah.
As we were talking earlier, the Seidad, we ego and body are servant of who we are really, which is the Seidad, to understand what we're here to find out.
Yeah.
And so once we find out something, who we are is really happy.
Yeah. So there's really stuff to be mined, like truly precious knowledge to be gained here, and that can only be gained in here in space-time, sitting here, and that's what Seidad is here for in us.
Intuition, for example, many intuitive inputs that we get, they come from the Seidad, from who we are. That simply, gives an idea that appears to come out of nowhere, right? Yeah. Where is it coming from?
Yeah,
it comes from the vaster self, or some other guides, or some other entity in this deeper reality where we exist.
As your theory, your way of thinking is so permissive to, let's just say, woo ideas. Anyone who has had channelings with extraterrestrial intelligences, you name it, entities, and it's permissive to all of that, right?
Of course.
Yeah, exactly. But how do we still discern? So is that sort of that scientific mindset? Say we move towards a science where we sort of are much more open to all of this. How to discern still? How to know?
Well, we discern with our consciousness. Consciousness then becomes the real tool to find out who we are. Right now, we think that it is reasoning is the real tool, or experiments in space and time. Certainly, those are good tools, but not enough. Especially if you want to explore things that can only be explored with consciousness. Other realities, for example, beyond space and time. But as far as physics is concerned, scientism is concerned, there is no other reality than what is space and time, right?
Yeah.
But we know that it cannot be that way, because you cannot explain all kinds of other stuff otherwise.
Exactly.
People that go out of body and meet other entities that are not in this space and time, The space and time that they experience is completely different than this space and time. Many of the people that go out of body, they can also experience this space and time, and actually this reality. They can report what they see, like we would report. But then they can go beyond that. Where is that coming from?
And it's also
certainly cannot be explored with an instrument, right? What kind of instrument do you the body, the instrument, which is the astral body of the the person that goes out of body, he goes through the windows without crashing the window. He goes through the wall, so it cannot be this physical body, and yet it is a body that has senses and that understands what's going on. How does that coming from? How can you study that? Certainly now with the Hadron Collider.
And you are a smart guy, Federico. I mean, and you're an entrepreneur. And working on this series, you must have sort of like hinges, if startups of ways to sort of build sort of companies around this whole idea of startup new research. Perhaps you're working on stuff you cannot share with us, but can you just give us a tip of the iceberg on how you are working, or you are sort of practically working with this now?
Well, yeah, I mean, clearly there is still some more theoretical work to do, and there will be for forever, really.
Yeah, of course.
Because you have to connect on all kinds of ways. Then there is my attention is moving more toward the falsifying this theory or the competing theories by experiments, and then also bringing into the world ways in which people can actually experience, helping people experience their own unity with one. Because once you have that experience, you cannot go back. You cannot go back because you know that experience is real. And so you may refuse it for a while, but then you know.
So you are working on ways to contribute to more people realizing who they truly are.
Correct.
How are you doing that?
Well, that's one thing at a time.
Check. I get you. I won't prompt you further, but I just had to ask.
After my awakening experience, it was clear that was just a taste of something that I didn't even understand how it could be possible. So I had to find out. So it wasn't like, now I know everything. In fact, no, now I know something that I didn't know before, but it's so much more powerful than anything that I had learned before that I must go deeper and find out. So I started looking for help, people that knew more than I, and so on. I found a therapist, for example, that would give me some hints about transpersonal therapy. Obviously, I didn't go to a psychiatrist to get a pill, right? But basically, started that way. So little by little, you find your way. Because once you decide that you're going to find out, the world will present you the next step to do. Once you want, the world will respond. In fact, the world responded to my asking, I want to know why I'm not happy. And that's a problem of consciousness. So I want to know what consciousness is. And so I got the experience that opened, a little bit, then closed, and then you're on your own again.
Beautiful, beautiful. It reminds me of Alan Watts saying that hide and seek aspect, right?
Yeah.
You're finding and then closing off again, because it also wants you to continue. It wants
course.
to, which is beautiful.
Yeah. And it's also an adventure. You have to love it. It's not like, now what am I going to do? Fear, right? No way. No, it's actually, in fact, is the first step of, you just almost like a door opens and there is a new world that you didn't even know existed before. So, man, what a bounty.
Yeah, thank you. But Federico, we talked about a lot, and one of the comments to the previous video was, this is the most important video of my life. Awesome. People saying that about a conversation we had. And though I only got 20% of it, but I really hope this conversation has given people the next 20%. Maybe we should do 3 more. I'd be in for it, but once in a while to check in with you, but to give you sort of the final space to share. If there's anything left you would like to share with our audience, please do so.
Well, one will never stop knowing itself, right? It will be, because the more you know, the more there is to know, because the more connections. Since we are not made of separable parts, the more you know, then the new knowing has to be connect with everything else that you know. And that's all new. So you can imagine if one is like that, that's for us too, right? So there is ever more to know, ever more to enjoy, but most important is to work together. Because the moment that we understand that we are parts whole of one, competition is out, cooperation is in. For me to know myself, I need to know you like myself. And for you to know yourself, you need to know me like yourself and everybody else. So you can see how there is a complete change in the attitude that we have toward life. The attitude of scientists toward life is the survival of the fittest. What is that about? Is that cooperation? That actually sanctifies competition. It gives a reason why we have to compete.
Yeah.
And I give you a reason why, to cooperate. And that changes from this way to that way.
Yeah, beautiful. And you embody it. I felt it again today. I felt it in our previous conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
it's a pleasure, always.
I really enjoyed it, Federico. Yeah. To you watching this, I think it's a great time to be alive, not only for the developments and theories like Federico's, but also the fact that on our channel you can find a lot of videos that go deeper in this. And also YouTube is just an amazing space, right? We discussed sort of how can people give hands to this. In your day and age, it would be like finding the right people in the community. Now you can just go online, watch videos, also in all sorts of ways to just experience this. And we as Essentia try to be the hub where you can sort of come back with those experiences. We're not about that direct experiences very often, but we are about hardcore science and to make sense of it and to be rigorous about that. And you're part of that journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's a pleasure.